Peace be upon you all. The pyramids of Giza are among the structures that have puzzled scientists and researchers for centuries, especially the Great Pyramid of Khufu. This pyramid is made of around 2.3 million stone blocks, and these stones are incredibly heavy. Some of them weigh over 70 tons each. At the same time, the pyramid rises to a height of nearly 150 meters. I know most of us don't like numbers, but these numbers are truly mind-blowing. How did the ancient Egyptians manage to lift stones this massive to such extreme heights? This task is difficult even today, with all our modern technology, heavy machinery, and advanced construction methods. So, how did people who lived more than 4,000 years ago build this enormous structure without technology, machinery, or modern tools? All they supposedly had were some simple metal tools and pieces of wood. And what's even stranger? How did they fit these stones together so perfectly without using any cement or adhesive materials? There are only two possible explanations. Either, God forbid, these people had supernatural help, or they discovered a construction method that required no advanced technology, no complex tools, just a very simple idea. So simple, in fact, that no one ever thought of it. Welcome. My name is Omar Abdeen, and this episode of Midnight Questions answers one question. How did the ancient Egyptians build the pyramids? Before we begin, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. The question of how the pyramids were built has inspired countless theories. Some have been completely rejected, some are partially accepted, and some are quite bizarre. One of the strangest theories claims that aliens built the pyramids. Yes, exactly that. Even though it sounds ridiculous to many people, there are actually studies and books discussing this idea. And a surprising number of people fully believe that extraterrestrials were responsible. Of course, this theory makes no sense at all. It's nothing more than speculation. Another strange belief is that the ancient Egyptians were giants, massive beings similar to the characters in Attack on Titan. According to this idea, giant humans could easily lift stones with their bare hands and build pyramids effortlessly. Some even joke that they threw stones to each other. Obviously, none of this is true. The ancient Egyptians were not giants. Their heights were completely normal, just like modern humans. We know this from the mummies displayed in museums. Their bodies are not massive or oversized in any way. Even the coffins found in tombs and inside the pyramids themselves are of normal human size. So that theory falls apart completely. The traditional story we were taught as children says that the stones were transported from southern Egypt to Giza, then dragged across massive distances. Later, they supposedly built huge dirt ramps around the pyramid and pulled the stones upward using wooden rollers and ropes. And just like that, the pyramids were built. But if we stop and think about this story scientifically, it quickly collapses. First, for such ramps to support 70-ton stones, they would have needed to be reinforced concrete. A dirt ramp would simply collapse under that weight. Second, wooden rollers could never withstand such massive loads. You'd need steel wheels at the very least. So the idea of dirt ramps and wooden rollers makes absolutely no sense. Even if we assume this method was possible, the size of those ramps would have been 10 times larger than the pyramid itself. Some researchers argue that building and later removing such gigantic ramps without leaving any trace, would be a greater achievement than building the pyramid itself. And scientifically, removing structures of that scale without any evidence remaining is impossible. To this day, no traces have ever been found. Some modern researchers tried to rescue this theory by suggesting that the Egyptians poured water over the sand to reduce friction while dragging the stones. While this may slightly reduce the force required, it still does not solve the fundamental problems. As for transporting over 2 million massive stones from southern Egypt to Giza, some researchers believe the desert was once filled with Nile canals and waterways, allowing stones to be transported by water. But again, this explanation only tries to justify an already flawed theory. Despite all these attempts, the traditional explanation remains illogical and full of unanswered questions. The biggest question remains: how were these massive stones lifted to such extreme heights without cranes, machines, or modern tools? No one has a clear answer. Did the Egyptians have a device that could neutralize gravity? Could they simply lift stones effortlessly? There is absolutely no evidence for that. Now let's move to another mystery. How were the stones fitted together so precisely without cement? We were once told that the Egyptians used something called air displacement, removing air between stones so they locked together naturally. But once again, there is no proof. Removing air itself requires advanced technology. One of the most astonishing facts about the pyramids is the extreme precision of the stone surfaces. Each block is shaped like a perfect cube or rectangle. And according to traditional theories, these stones were carved by hand using primitive tools. Carving and perfectly leveling 2 million stones is a near impossible task. It would require unimaginable labor and precision. So even the idea of carving the stones becomes questionable. But what if I told you that the stones of the pyramids were poured into place, just like modern concrete? This theory was proposed by Swiss researcher Erich von Daniken and French scientist Joseph Davidovits. They suggested that the Egyptians created an artificial stone mixture, stronger than modern concrete, made from limestone, clay, and heated chemical compounds. Once dried, the material became indistinguishable from natural stone and could last for thousands of years. This single theory solves nearly every problem we've discussed. No carving, no long-distance transport, no lifting massive stones to great heights. So how did scientists arrive at this idea? While scanning the pyramids in search of hidden chambers, researchers noticed inconsistent and illogical readings. The only explanation was that the stones contained a large amount of water. Scientifically, natural stone cannot contain such water levels. This strongly suggested that the stones were man-made. He managed to produce artificial stone blocks that bonded perfectly together. Joseph Davidovits later recreated a similar mixture experimentally, and the results were successful. Today, researchers continue trying to decode the exact formula used by the ancient Egyptians, one of many secrets they mastered alongside astronomy, chemistry, and mummification. In simple terms, the pyramid stones may have been poured as a liquid material into molds, then hardened into perfectly aligned blocks. This method may also explain how temples, obelisks, and other massive structures were built. To be clear, we are not saying this theory is absolute truth, but it is currently one of the most logical and plausible explanations. And perhaps, one day, an even better theory will emerge. What no one can deny is this: the ancient Egyptians reached levels of scientific knowledge in certain fields that we still haven't fully achieved today, despite all our modern technology. And with that, we answer tonight's question. How did the ancient Egyptians build the pyramids? As always, if there's a question keeping you awake at midnight, leave it in the comments.